Hey guys, it is me, the former film student, back today. We are on episode 30 of my 31 Nights, 31 Frights series. I hope you guys have had such a great time watching these reviews. They don't get a ton of views, but those of you who do watch, I really do appreciate it. It makes me feel like even if like 5 people watch these videos, it makes it worth it. And I do appreciate those of you who have consistently watched and enjoyed the series thus far. Today we are on episode 30. Like I mentioned, we only have this one and one more left. Of course, we have the last day of October, Halloween, so you can probably guess what I'm going to be reviewing on that day. But with that being said, let's get right into this episode with one of my favorite films in the horror genre, and a film that I watch every single October for very good reason, and that is Trick or Treat. So, Trick or Treat was released in 2007, directed by Michael Dougherty, who went on to direct Krampus, which is a horror film that takes place during Christmas time, which is a movie that I have a lot of fun with. He also went on to direct Godzilla King of Monsters, which is a really weird career trajectory, in my opinion, to go from directing two kind of horror films that are pretty low scale in terms of the budget, how many people actually went to go see them in theaters. This one sort of has like a cult following. I don't think it did that great financially, and I don't think Krampus did either. So for a studio to trust him with Godzilla King of Monsters is pretty crazy to me. But good for him. I didn't really like Godzilla King of Monsters, but I like both of his horror films. I think they're both really fun, entertaining, holiday-themed horror films. And we're supposed to be getting a Trick or Treat too, but I've been hearing that for like 7 years now. I would love a second Trick or Treat film. I think that'd be such a blast. But anyway, for those of you who do not know, Trick or Treat is an anthology film, and it has 4 different stories that take place on Halloween night. And the stories kind of connect and are interwoven together, even sometimes in very minimalistic ways. It might just be a character from one story popping up in another story, or sometimes they connect a little bit in a more heavy sense. And overall, this movie's a fucking blast. I love this film. It's one that like I mentioned, I watch this every October. I've watched this every October probably for the last 5 to 6 years, probably even longer than that. And my little backstory about this film is several years ago when I was like 10 or 11, we were having a family get together, and it was around Halloween, and me and my cousin were really big into like slashers at the time. We loved Friday the 13th, Halloween, and we loved talking about that stuff. And so we wanted to watch a horror film while the grown-ups upstairs were talking. And we found Trick or Treat on Netflix. We couldn't find any of the slashers on any streaming service because that was back when like Netflix was really the only one. And so we looked on Netflix, didn't have any, and we saw Trick or Treat, and we're like, oh, what is this? And then we watched like the first 20 minutes, and it just was not what we wanted, and we shut it off. And then years later, I had a friend recommend it to me, and I'm like, oh, I think I've seen like the beginning of that, and I was like, I didn't really like it. He's like, no, you gotta watch the whole thing. It's really great. It's really fun. And I ended up watching it, so thanks for the recommendation, Josh, if you're watching this. And yeah, Trick or Treat. I absolutely loved it, and it instantly became a favorite of mine and a movie that I knew I just wanted to watch every October. And the main reason for that is not because it's like one of the greatest horror films of all time. I wouldn't even go as far as to say it's in like the top 50. It's just a fun, really entertaining Halloween-themed horror film, and it does probably the best job out of any horror film I've ever seen of really getting across the Halloween vibe, the aesthetic, the sort of feel of Halloween. It like oozes from the screen when you're watching this movie. And a lot of that has to do with the fantastic production design. They do a great job with the sets, the costumes, the makeup, just the overall aesthetic of this movie, the way the cinematography is handled with the shots and the composition and the lighting, all of it. It just combines it so well, and it's such a Halloween centric film. All 4 of the different Halloween stories in this one are all like sort of Halloween lore when you look back at like the actual sort of foundation of the holiday. And it in our minds today, it's Halloween. Oh, like it's a bunch of kids wearing costumes and trick-or-treating. But they even say in the film that the origins of the holiday are a lot darker than people actually know. Um, but anyway, getting a little, sidetracked there. But anyway, yeah, Halloween, guys. It has a fantastic star-studded cast. Just on the cover here, it again, there's a bunch of different characters, but Dylan Baker, Leslie Bibb, Anna Paquin, Brian Cox. amongst others. It just has a very wide cast. Obviously, it's an anthology film, so you do have four different stories filled with multiple different characters. I have to say, probably my favorite story in this one is the one with the girls. They're trying to find dates for a party, and that's all I'm going to say about it. I don't want to spoil anything because this is a film that I feel like is so much more fun when you experience it yourself. You experience the story, you experience how the different stories play out in very unique and interesting ways. They take a lot of cool, interesting, unique twists and turns, which just make the film an absolute blast. It also adds a lot of rewatchability to the film to where you can rewatch it and just sort of point out small details that sort of, pay off later on, and you're like, oh, okay, that's neat, that pays off later, and it's, oh, that's a cool setup, and all of that great stuff. But I don't have a ton to say about this movie. As far as the technical standpoints, the film is incredibly well shot. I love the aesthetic of it. The cinematography is great. There's a lot of great smooth camera movements, a lot of great dolly shots, a lot of great crane shots that really make the film look and feel very professional despite it not having an incredibly high budget. It looks a shit ton better than a lot of Blumhouse movies, that's for damn sure. I love the performances in this movie. None of the actors are given a ton to do from a story or acting standpoint, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that, again, this is a 90-minute film that has four different stories to tell, so each one only gets like 15 to 25 minutes max of attention and screen time. And I don't really mind that. This isn't like a movie that you go in to absorb the performances. It's not like Jack Nicholson in The Shining or anything of that sorts. But yeah, the performances are all really solid. I don't think there's any weak performances. The kid in the movie, there's a child actor in the first segment, and he's okay. He's not amazing, but he's not terrible either. He doesn't really detract from the scenes that he's in. Um, but overall, yeah, the film looks great. The performances are good. It's extremely well edited. None of the stories in this film, out of the four stories that are told, do I ever feel like they drag on too long or they're cut too short. I feel like every story is given the appropriate I feel like each story is given the appropriate amount of attention and detail and screen time, which is a really difficult task when you have four different stories to tell, and for someone to watch it and be like, yeah, that was all handled extremely well. None of it felt sloppily put together, none of it felt choppy, and it just feels like a really well edited film, especially for what they had to work with. But the star of the film, in my opinion, is the script. I absolutely love all four of the stories. None of them do I dislike. If any of them are my least favorite, it's probably the last segment of the film. But the first three segments are all fantastic. I love how they sort of play out. I love the twists and turns that the film takes. You always feel like you know what's going on, and then they'll, flip the switch, turn the tables, and you're in a completely different story at that point. And it's all handled so incredibly well. I think Michael Dougherty did a fantastic job directing this movie. He has a great, strong directorial presence. The practical effects in this movie are also fantastic. I love that they opted to use practical effects over CGI. This was 2007, so this is when CGI was really making its way into films and into the industry, and it would have been so much easier for them to just take, a computer and try to animate a lot of these things, but I'm really glad that they stuck with the practical effects because it makes the film feel a lot more timeless, and 13 years later I can watch this movie and it still looks great. And I think a lot of that has to do with just Michael Dougherty, because if you watch 2015's Krampus, there is a lot of practical effects in that movie as well. So it seems like he's a guy who really prefers to use practical in-camera stuff than to just do it on a computer in post-production, which I really do admire. It takes a lot for a director to kind of go against the grain and say, no, we're not going to take the easy route. We're not going to just leave it to a CGI artist. We're going to actually take the time, plan things out, do it in camera, do the practical effects, build the things, and it all just looks really great. And again, the set work in this is absolutely fantastic. The production design is just spectacular. One of the sets that was built in particular is a sort of drained out lake, and it's incredibly atmospheric, and the atmosphere in this movie is another thing I'll talk about in a minute. But man, just the emptied out lake, it's dried out. They take like this sort of elevator shaft down, super creepy. It's very atmospheric, it's very foggy, and it's just really great, and I'm really impressed with how they did the set with that. But again, I was just talking about the atmosphere, and that's, again, the best thing that this movie does outside of the screenplay is the atmosphere that it builds. Again, it has such a Halloween atmosphere to it, and I really do appreciate that. And that's really all I have to say about this movie. I think from a technical level, it does a lot of things really well. The performances across the board are solid. The cinematography is really great and complementary to the tone that it's going for. It does a great job at building atmosphere and giving off a very, heavy Halloween aesthetic and vibe to it. The practical effects and production design and set design are all really really great as well. Michael Dougherty does a great job directing this movie. The editor did a fantastic job with handling 4 different stories and pacing them all out to near perfection. And as a whole, this is one of the most fun horror films that you can watch. It's not incredibly scary, so if you're someone who does not like super scary films, then this is one that I can recommend to you because it is not super scary. It's not going to keep you up late at night. It's not going to give you nightmares. But it's just a really fun, really enjoyable film from every conceivable standpoint. Again, it's one that I watch every single October, normally towards the end of the month near Halloween, just again because it gives such a heavy Halloween vibe to it, and it's a great seasonal horror film. It's not one that I really watch outside of October, not because I don't like it in other times of the year, but more so just because it's such a great film to watch around the Halloween season. But with that being said, I really recommend this movie to you guys. Trick or Treat. If you have not seen it, please check it out. I'm not sure if it's streaming on any streaming services right now. That being said, I also just got this Blu-ray. I normally just watch it on a streaming service. But I absolutely love this Blu-ray. It has Sam on it as the sort. He's sort of like the antagonist in the movie. He's the character who shows up in every one of the stories. And antagonist is a strong word because he doesn't have a strong presence in the film. At least he doesn't have a very active role in the movie. He always, every time you see him on screen, he's very creepy to look at and stuff like that. But he's sort of, I guess, the icon of this film. If Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers are the characters for Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween, then Sam is the Trick or Treat iconic character. People have dressed up as him for Halloween. Yeah, he doesn't actually look like that for most of the film. He has like this weird bag over his head. So I'm not sure why they would put this on the cover and not like what he actually looks like for a majority of the film. But I feel like I'm rambling on at this point. Sorry guys, again, when I sit down to review these, especially for the Halloween ones when I have to put one out every day, it's very difficult to formulate my thoughts and to sort of just get everything I want to say in a very coherent way. So if I do ramble a lot, I do apologize. I don't script these videos. I think in the future, I'm going to sort of not script them, but have talking points and things that I definitely want to emphasize on in my reviews. But I just don't have the time to do that, especially when I have to pump a review out every day. But in the future, when I do reviews like this, hopefully, I have a little bit more time to prep and prepare these videos. But anyway, that is it for today, guys. Let me know in the comments down below, have you seen Trick or Treat? If you have, let me know what your thoughts are on it. I'd love to hear people's opinion on this movie. It sort of has like a cult following. It's not an extremely popular film, so if you're not a big fan of horror, chances are you've never heard of it. It's a great film, though. I have a blast watching it. Definitely, if you can, watch it with a couple of friends. I think it's a great group experience. And it's really fun just to watch all the different stories unfold. It's a great anthology film. So if you're someone who hates films because you can't pay attention to one story for a long time, this has 4 of them. So definitely check it out if you can. If you do watch it and hate it, I do apologize, though. I don't know if there's a lot to hate about this movie. It's just a really fun, entertaining film. And that is really it for today, guys. As always, if you liked the video, make sure to click the like button, subscribe to me. If you want to hear more from me, make sure to click the little bell notification button so you do get notified when I post new videos. We have 1 episode left, guys. Look forward to it. I'm really excited to review a film that I've been very excited to talk about on this channel for since its creation, which was like 2 months ago. But through the month of October, it's one that I've just been really excited to talk about. And that is it for today, guys. As always, I will see you guys on the next episode.